Welcome back to the Present Life Podcast. My name is Aaron. I'm here as usual with AJ. And on the heels of our previous discussion on fatherhood, it turns out we actually have more to say on the topic of inner conflicts we experience as dad. Who would have thought we'd have more to say? Probably all of you. But hey, if you didn't get a chance to hear or watch our last episode, we discussed some of these kind of inner conflicts. In particular, how do we balance our time? Like inside and outside of the house, time reading the Bible, either with our kids or by ourselves, and then time hanging out with the guys, kind of like now, or just, I don't know, going bowling, golfing, whatever it might be. So we're going to keep on that in that vein and going to discuss some more inner conflicts we deal with as dads, as husbands, with regards to money, time with the kids, and discipline. So when I mention those conflicts, I don't know, AJ, which one stands out to you as maybe most difficult, or just one that's most on your mind currently?
I think it brings, honestly, right away, it brings me back to what I talked about last episode about, how parenting is, being a dad is the greatest thing I've ever done, but it's also the thing that at times makes you hate yourself the most.
Yeah.
Part of that is because I have four kids, and I want to give all of them everything. And so I would probably say out of this, money and kids and discipline is one that is always difficult because it's part of the job. It's part of what you're called to do. I even tell my kids, I don't like disciplining you, but I have to discipline you. So that one's not great.
Yeah.
But kids and dispersing the time, dispersing the energy, who needs what at what time, reading past the walls that they have up, right? And trying to really not just guess what's going on in their lives, but having a relationship deep enough with all of them that they want to come to you. They want to talk to you. And so I'd probably, I think discipline's the easy answer, but I'm going to go with out of those ones, kids. Money for me, we'll touch on. I view money a little bit different than most people, and so we'll touch on that. But kids and who to spend time with.
Yeah. So
But
we'll start talking about that. I mean, I think I'm going to lean on you in this as well because I still struggle with this too, but I don't have four kids trying to talk to me at once. I got Noah trying to talk to me
yeah,
all the time. But then, we got a 3-month-old, almost 4-month-old in a few days here, probably when we post this. She'll be 4 months old. And so she's not talking to me, but I find the same struggle. I'm like, I don't know, with Noah, even when he wasn't talking and he was in his 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months or something, that he was the only one,
yeah,
and so we could give everything to him. And so there is that kind of constant guilt, that I feel sometimes when I'm, spending time with Noah, and Juliet's just like in the little rocker and she's watching us and she's, I'm sure, learning, by all of that. But then, I give her all the time and then Noah's running around her having a tantrum. I'm like, well, he has to do that. Like he has to
yeah.
be frustrated, in some ways. But I don't know. I think about like, do you, it's the constant, like, do you go, in sales, we would have this thing where it's like, okay, do you go and help the person who needs the help the most or the one who can get ahead the fastest? And it's like, I feel like either of those are not great mentalities to have
For
parenting for
No, for
parenting,
sure.
you know? And so yeah, what do you do? Do you go to the one who needs it most sometimes? Do you go to the one who can help the others? How do you deal with that?
Listen, based on just experiences with others, mentors, and people who I've looked up to, my father-in-law, for example, was a pastor for 30, 35 years out here in the Treasure Valley out here in Idaho. These are questions I've asked him because he had four kids as well. But yeah, it's hard to just say, which one needs it the most because one of them is more vocal, one of them is more internal, one
Yeah.
of them is more emotional. So they're all different. And if you sit back and, in my opinion, and here's some advice for you maybe, but if you try to sit back and you try to read like fully what's going on with every kid and you think just based on what you're seeing on the outside, you just I think it's going to be a struggle because there's so much more going on
Yeah.
on the inside with these kids with all the emotions and the growth and the development, everything pulling every which way. And my two oldest are girls, and then there's a 2-year gap, and then I've got the boys. The girls are 18 months apart, 2-year gap, and then the boys are 18 months apart, which is a phenomenal blessing. Everyone
Yeah.
has a best friend, but the so the girls are kind of going through the girl stuff together, and the
Yeah.
boys are kind of going through the boy stuff together. So God blessed me in that way.
Yeah.
But every one of them is so different. You hear parents say that all the time. Every one of my kids is so different. You have to learn how to communicate and how to listen and how to, touch them in the way they need to be touched and filled up and all those type of things. And none of them are the same. And so a lot of parents, I think, who have multiple kids will have their first. They'll go through it. They'll deal with, they'll figure out how to communicate with the first and think that's how it goes for all of them. That is not the way you want to approach it. That is not the way you want to approach it. What makes us different is what makes us beautiful, and God has created us all to be different for different reasons. So having kids and trying to treat them the same is difficult, but you want none of them to feel less than the other one.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line, and there's direct communication that needs to happen, and because if I give one of them, a treat, a piece of chocolate for being a first time listener, but then the other three don't, and then they look at you and they're like, "You like her more than us?"
Yeah, right.
They're like, "No, she listened, you didn't."
Yeah.
Oh, what? And then it becomes, and then dude, these kids are smart.
Yeah.
They have their ways to like pick and poke at you and to get what they want. But the point is that finding a method that works, but really being relational with all four of them, which is why I probably said this is the most difficult out of discipline, money, and kids, is because they're not always capable of sharing how they're really feeling because they don't know the words or can't find the words or don't know how to express it because of all the different things they're going through. But I have learned, and it's still difficult for me because I'm such a talker, as you can tell, I haven't shut up yet. But it's so much more important to ask and listen and listen and try as a parent to be a little bit more analytical, how they move, how they work, how they speak, what they mean, and just going more in depth, I think is great. But you saying you haven't connected with Juliet, obviously in the same way she's not communicating yet verbally, but for me, it took till about 2 to 3 years old for each kid for them to kind of separate from mom and time to have a relationship with dad. All of them. Like Luca is my youngest. He's 3 years old, 3.5 years old. We really started connecting recently, which is probably later than all of my kids. My little boy, I've started to connect with him differently. The relationship is changing. It's building. He's getting closer to me. And for mom, those are her 4 babies. But for dad, it comes at a different time. All 4 kids have come at a different time in their life when they have kind of, I don't want to say unlatched or separated. They just come to dad more often for the relational thing. So, dude, it's very hard. It's very hard every day. You want to give them, there's times where I'll just look at one of my kids and think, I haven't seen them for 30 minutes. I need to give them a hug. Or I haven't talked to them much today or whatnot. And so being very conscious and very selfless in how you move with your kids is vital. Is vital if you care. And for me, these are the people I care about the most, and I care about their salvation and their future the most. So that's kind of why I've stepped away fully from my media stuff and being locked in on my phone, because I'm done not giving these kids the relationships that they need and they deserve from me, and that I desperately need from them, because they do more for us than we do for them. I truly believe. So anyway.
Yeah, well, I think, there's just so much with like our fathers, everybody's father. If you're out there and you have not even a great relationship with your father or a horrible relationship with your father, it has something to do with that connection that you got at a young age or that you continued to grow with. And, and I think it goes back to that care aspect. I mean, if you, the way you talk about it, you're constantly processing it, and being aware. I tell my students, like, your education's not about content, it's about awareness. And if you can be aware of, how you're seen, how other people feel, and there's so many different dynamics that change on a given day, several times a day, and your kids are home, most of the day. And so you also, it probably also, is tougher for you because you feel like you have more time with them, but then it just goes like all over the place. You know, I think in some way that makes it easier for me sometimes, because when I get home, you know, it's 3:30 or something like that. I know I only got like 4 hours. And so I can be a little bit more focused and intentional because I know I only have that much time. But I know too, when I have more time, just like us all, you know, if you got 8 hours to do something, sometimes you wait 7 hours to do it. You know? And so, but yeah, I think it's too, you bring up this idea of, you know, giving a treat. You know, I think it's like, well, what is fair? You know, I tell my students too, I'm like, fair is probably my least favorite word in the English language, because it doesn't really exist in our world. Like, what is fair? You know, even we're watching soccer earlier today. It's like, is that called fair? Is this, you know, happen? Like, yes, we're applying by the same rules, but you know, can those things even exist? Can you have fairness in a relationship, especially with multiple kids, different ages, different, you know, needs? Because I think my parents, in a lot of ways, they focus so much on things being quote fair. You know, well, if you know Lauren, my sister, if she got something at this age, you know, like a car or whatever, then I was going to get it at that age. You know, or if I was going to get, if they were going to spend this much money on the Christmas presents, they were going to make sure they spent this much money on the Christmas presents. And I think there was almost too much of a focus on that it made it. Can almost make it seem unfair. You know, because also kids don't know how much money you're spending on certain stuff, you know, until a certain age for sure. So yeah, I think, you know, that's a constant battle is who to spend time with, how to spend time with them. And like you said too, I mean, how do you even know when like we struggle to process all of our thoughts as adult men, you know, like, can we really expect them to be able to actually tell us what we need? You know, then I feel like it's kind of like then you're back into a husband-wife relationship where you're kind of like, the woman needs something, but isn't going to tell you that she needs that thing.
She wants you to be a psychic.
She wants you to know exactly what it is. And they're not doing that, but they don't have the ability to share necessarily. And then might not know they needed that particular thing, and you might not either. For years. You know, that's tough.
And you said it, and I keep hearing this last week. I've heard it 3 or 4 times, where the days are long, but the years are short. And man, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that. And it's every day I'm thinking like, man, I want to spend more time. I want to spend more time. And I won't go into it, but we're making a life decision for ourselves to really focus on this specifically because my wife and I, we're prioritizing our relationship with our kids. Even more so now than we ever have. That's why we're making big time, life-altering life decisions to go do certain things where we can put ourselves in that situation and really focus on those relationships that, when it comes down to it, will matter the most in our lives more than anything, and how we can affect them and pour into them. And they all need it. They all want it, whether they say it or admit it or not. They all want it. They all need it. It's how we're wired. It's how we were created. But folks, don't let the long days get too irritating, I'll say. Like at times it just gets overwhelming. Like you said, my kids are homeschooled. I'm with them all day, so I'm like, oh well, I'm with them all day. But that's not relational all the time. That's being present, but that's not being intentional, which we've talked on before, and you gifted me the book Intentional Father, which is changing my life and calling me out on many things. So I'm a little upset with you, but I know it's love. I'm just playing, but it's been great. So intentionality and understanding that you don't judge a book by its cover. You don't look at your kid and be like, oh, they're fine. They're doing great. They're smiling they're playing with, no, it's not how it works. There's a devil and he's real. And so, and we're starting to see that with my girls. Like, oh, I don't like this about my hair, or I don't like this, and all of a sudden the physical, like they're starting to realize, So anyway, on to the next one. But yes, kids is because you care so much, and because it's the thing I care about the most. I think that makes it the most difficult.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk money, you know, because there's never any problems with with money. What do we do with money? I mean, I think like I like. You know, I think it's biblical in terms of the way you view money so much is it's not ours, and I believe that too. It's from God. It's a gift from God, and we're just supposed to be good stewards of it. You know, and so But I think, I have the struggle of kind of like wanting to give my, wife and kids everything, needing to save, be content. Like, what is that even like, in our society today, is being content. And then giving to like charity in the church. I mean, it's taken a long time for us to, once we got here, we bounced around some churches and different things. And so, currently, like we don't on a regular basis give to our church. I think we'll start, but like it's been a tough thing to, we have other kind of foundations and things like that we give to. Like we have a kid that we like, what is it? Not adopted, but like sponsor. Yeah, in the Philippines. His name's Kefi. And then, and so we like to be able to give to something we feel like we know exactly more what the money is doing. And
in this country for sure.
Yeah, right. You never know what the case is there. Our money's now going to people who have, I don't know, paid for dumb degrees.
Yeah. Who are attacking us.
Yeah, that too. And so yeah, I think with money, it's tough too, because we have this mindset in at least I think in the Christian world, that money is a bad thing, and I think very clearly it's not a bad thing. It's the love of it. Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters. Either you hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve God and money. And so, but it's such a fine line, because God has given us this tool to be able to do incredible things for other people, whether it is our family, whether it is our community, whether it is our church, or people who are impoverished or struggling and things like that. So, I struggle with that a lot in terms of, how to divvy that up, how to prioritize that, because, there's part of the Bible that says, well, you're first and your family, it needs to be taken care of, and that's the most important thing. But then it's also like, well, what about, the least of these? And so, I don't know, how do you process that? How do you prioritize your money?
Oh man, I mean, it's just what you said. It's trying to really figure out, what does it mean to you, and what does it mean when we say, oh, it's God's. Like it's got, like everything we have, everything good is from the Lord. And so I think this is a really touchy subject for a lot of people. I think it confuses a lot of people. For me, I could care less about money. I do understand that it is needed to do things, and God has given to us, and I could go through my story of how we've gotten to where we are, and how I've done nothing, He's done everything. Mm-hmm. It's been all Him, and He's blessed my family. He's given us the ability to go do some things. He's put some things in our heart that we would never have been able to do had He not led us to where we are. So I have been going through, for a while, I've been going through where my family and I, we know where it's all coming from. We're grounded in that. And so for me, it's not really a battle. You think about money often, though, when you have 4 kids.
Yeah.
And if I were to go, what am I leaving to them? Are they going to be okay? Because the only thing I care about when it comes to money is, am I going to have enough money to provide for my kids to go after the things that they love?
Yeah.
My kids don't have to go to college. They don't have to go to high school. I'm that guy. Like, what do you want to do? Like, figure out what it is you love and go after it. Mm-hmm. And I will be here to support you and push you in that direction financially. I'll pray for you. I will guide you. I will be there in every way I can. And I think we have an obligation, and I think that's biblical. A lot of people will disagree with that. My mom and my stepdad, they believe in providing for so my mom has provided for my sister and I, and she has created, the Lord has used her and her selflessness and her biblical beliefs, and how things used to be done in Bible days. And she's kind of used that in how she's blessed us and how she's helped us get ahead. And her goal was always, I want to help you guys get ahead financially so you don't have to worry about finances, you can put your heart and your focus into what you love, because that was put there by God the desires of your heart. Obviously, the devil can tweak those and bring evil desires and all that. But the word desire actually in the Greek means of the Father. So God puts things in your heart. And for us, we're firm believers, and we want our kids, just like my mom pushed my sister and I, like, find what it is you love, go after it, and see where God takes it. He could take it this way or that way or that way. And there's things that when I've done that, I mean, God bless the broken road. Like, I went after this and ended up going this way and found this. And then I went this way and found this, and that broke off. And then I fell in love with this, found my wife. And then, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So money is, I mean, I look at money the same way I look at athletics and sports. They're a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool for God to use in His will for you and for your life. Do I love money? No. Do I think money ruins people and clouds people's judgment and puts blinders over their eyes? Yes.
Yeah.
Most people. Do I want money? Do I want to continue to make money? Do I want my money to make me money? Yeah, of course, because I want my kids, if my son comes to me and says, Dad, I feel called to be a pilot. This is how much it's going to cost for me to go, to pilot school or however it looks, whatever they want to do. My daughters are like, Dad, we love horses. We want to ride horses. I'm like, all right, that's expensive, but let's do it.
Yeah.
Then, Dad, I want to play club soccer. Dad, I want to cheer. It's like, all right, this is why we have our money, and we would sell things to get money. I'd sell cars and houses and whatever to allow my kids to pursue what they love.
Yeah.
And so that's how I view it. Sounds like we're on the same page with that. We have a kind of a biblical understanding that money is a tool that God uses. It is not our God, and He is our provider. So like when I lose real estate deals now, and it took me a while when I first started, but when I lose deals now, or somebody goes with somebody else, or a house doesn't sell, I don't worry about it anymore. I'm like, God, your will here. Like, your will. You are my provider, not the person that hired me to be their agent, not this person or that person or this company or that company. That's not how it works, man. And that's a faith thing.
Yeah.
But we've gotten pretty grounded in that, and God has blessed us using my parents and using different things. It's been great. So
that's funny. Like, speaking of that, I think it's interesting. Like, I don't know, I struggled with this for a long time with regards to money and God is this aspect of, how do we, and it was even the thought that I had when I, took my, the new job is, okay, am I supposed to allow God to provide? Well, but that doesn't mean I don't do anything. I can't just let it fall from the sky, right?
A lot of people read it that way, don't they?
Totally. Yeah. And so I think it's a really tough thing that I've struggled with a lot. It's like, because we are so, when things go great as humans, we want to give ourselves credit. And when things go bad, we want to blame God, and it's tough too to, when things go great, it still involved us, but it's hard to then take a step back and be like, well, God gave me the motivation or the energy or the focus, or, Proverbs 10:4 says, lazy hands make poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And you're like, well, those are my hands. I did it. But well, how do I have hands? Yeah. It's like, it's kind of silly sometimes, but you got to go back there and you're like, all right, well, the reason I have another breath right now is because He's giving me that breath, and it's a tough thing, I think, constantly to think about, because sometimes it does sound silly. It's like, I'm going to keep living through these next 20 minutes, right? But by His will, and so, speaking of His will, I think we'll keep on rolling. One of, I think, the biggest aspects of His will and what He's done throughout all of humanity is discipline His people. And so we'll talk a little bit about discipline here. How do we discipline as fathers? How do we get disciplined? And so I kind of thought about it in a few ways, like discipline of ourselves, discipline of kids, and discipline from God. And
discipline with money.
Discipline with money.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, overall we have to think about, I like the phrase, well, you have two kinds of pain in this world. You're going to have pain of discipline, or you're going to have pain of disappointment, and so what do you want? Do you want pain of discipline? I mean, it's not fun to eat the right things sometimes. It's not fun to work out. It's not fun. I mean, sometimes it gets there, but it takes a while to get to that point. And so, when I think about that, I think too, what order do we have to have it in? You know, I think in order to be maybe good disciplinarians, there's the
There it
word.
is. Oh,
Okay.
Mr. English teacher.
Like discipliners, not the word.
Pull Valley, you're fired.
You know, to be good disciplinarians of our kids, we then have to be good disciplinarians of ourselves and be disciplined in ourselves. And where does that come from? We have to accept the discipline that God places on us. You know, and if we don't kind of follow in that order, just like when I talk about like, well, you know, you got to focus on this relationship, you know, with God, then with yourself, then with others. It kind of has to, I think, be the same way. And I think one of the hardest things that I deal with is like the discipline, you know, from Him. You know, I know that I'm constantly having these struggles or difficulties or whatever it is. But, you know, Deuteronomy 8, know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, the Lord your God disciplines you. So if I'm going to be allowed to be respected in the way that I do discipline my son or my daughter, I better be ready to accept that discipline from my Heavenly Father.
Which is, like you said, very difficult.
Yeah.
Discipline, man. Learn something. Some people will laugh at this, but learn something recently about the disciples of Jesus, the 12 disciples. Disciples actually means the disciplined ones.
Yeah.
Like if you look at where all those guys came from, tax collectors and all the lowest parts of the earth, those guys came from, how they had to step in and they had to be disciplined and they had to, I mean, Jesus was probably throwing it at them. Like he was, hey, you need to get rid of this. You need to get rid of self. You know, all this and this. And I can only imagine what some of those guys had to go through. Watching The Chosen has been amazing to kind of get a visual of that. I'm a visual learner, and I love it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like so many times with Simon Peter and all these guys. But discipline, hardest thing to do when it comes to having kids is to discipline them, because there are tears involved. There are feelings that are hurt. There's misunderstanding at times from them. They don't know why. And you have to find the right way to discipline. And how many conversations have we heard or have we had over the years of, you know, as a culture of disciplining, you know, is physical discipline, spanking and the belt and hot sauce and the soap or whatever.
Yeah, right.
I'm just throwing all the ones I went through out there. Shout out Dad. But yeah, man, I mean, like people now in this generation is like, well, that's child abuse.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's really, I mean, it's just crazy because everyone's going to have their own opinion and perception and thoughts based on how they were brought up and based on, you know, their understanding of the word and whatnot. But disciplining my kids sucks, bro.
Yeah.
And I tell them, like I said earlier, like daddy does not like to snap at you, to yell at you, and he shouldn't be yelling. So there's more times I have to ask forgiveness because of how I discipline, then they have to ask me for forgiveness for what I'm disciplining them for.
Yeah, yeah, right.
I mean, it's there, it's in us. And to touch back on something I started talking about earlier when I said like my oldest is starting to go through new things as a young lady and whatnot, and her brain's developing and more emotions and more like, oh, my hair looks this way or I look this way. Like it's so difficult as they get older. You the way you discipline has to change because they start laughing at you.
Yeah.
And then you go to this new level of anger that you're like, whoa, I haven't seen that for a while. And so it's really disciplining yourself in the Lord in order to discipline them, or allowing the Lord to discipline them through you, which is extremely difficult. Because it's getting everything inside of you that's wrong out of the way so you can affect them the right way. But once again, I'm listening to a podcast. It's called Famous at Home. It's great. It's great for Christian parents and Christian families. And they talk about how, you know, how they struggle with disciplining and what that looks like for them. And so you try to go and take pieces from everyone, but also understanding that we are such a mess.
Yeah.
We are such a mess, and I hate messing up in the midst of disciplining my kids, it hurts my heart. But once again, God uses them for us more, as much, if not more, than He's using us for them.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people may not agree with that or understand that. But for me, I've seen it, I feel it, I know it. But disciplining is not something I enjoy doing. But my oldest now has to be disciplined different than all the other ones.
Yeah.
And you just hope. I did hear something that I will segue over to you. I did hear something that your kids become who you are.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. And that's for me. I struggle with self-condemnation. I've talked about that in previous episodes and why parenting can make you hate yourself. It's more self-condemnation and whatnot. But I always tell my kids, I look at them, and after they get disciplined and we talk, I'm like, your job is to be better than me, and my job is to make sure you're better than I am.
Yeah.
I'm trying to impart into you the things that I didn't get, while trying to keep all my crap away from you is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very hard, gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, and hard, but that's why we need God to guide, so.
Yeah, and I think it's the physical discipline. I mean, I haven't gotten that. We have a 2-year-old and 3-month-old. There's not any of that happening. But it's
not
like
yet.
they wouldn't understand either, and I certainly don't want to do that. It's going to break my heart when I have to.
Yeah.
But there's so many of these visuals, and I know it's not. Some of it's more metaphorical or figurative kind of language here, but Proverbs 13:24, whoever spares the rod hates his son, but who loves him is diligent to discipline him. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if I need to use a rod, but like if you're sparing that, I think we see that same kind of thing in the kids that we grew up with, the ones that had the cool parents or whatever, they ended up a complete mess. The ones that had a curfew, the ones that had rules, the ones that weren't allowed to do X, Y, Z with these people or at this time or at this place or whatever, and didn't have just all the freedom. Those are the kids that have jobs and careers and families and are, and I'm not, it's not 100% that way, but it's the probability is higher.
Yeah.
When you've been disciplined. It says Proverbs 29, discipline your son and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart. Proverbs 23, do not withhold discipline from a child. If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. If you strike him with the rod, you will save his soul from Sheol, which is like, the underworld, and as they called it in the Old Testament. And so, I struggle with that because I'm not in that part of life now. But I remember, when I, was spanked when I was a kid, and the go-to line of parents is like, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And you're like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's no way.
But turn over. Yeah.
But like I feel that now, and I haven't even had to experience it. But I know too that that's my job. That my job is to set boundaries, because within boundaries is actually how we experience freedom. Just like with the laws of the Old Testament, New Testament, whatever you want to reference, it's. If we just have freedom, I ask my students this, I'm like, who has the most freedom in our society? Homeless people. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. They can do drugs on the sidewalk. They can commit crimes. They don't go to jail because they know they're just going to hang out there and get free food. I mean, they have the most freedom. Do you want that kind of freedom? No, you need to have boundaries. You need to have discipline. You need to be slapped on the wrist a little bit, literally or figuratively, every once in a while. To understand those boundaries, or else you'll just never know where they are. And so, I struggle with that too, just thinking about what that's going to be like, when I eventually have to do that more often.
Yeah.
But I certainly think, it's only been a couple years, that I've been a dad now, but I'm a billion times more patient than I was before we had kids.
Yeah.
And I know I yelled way more and had way more anger in my life before I had kids, and now I just know there's always someone watching, and someone that, like when you say you want your kids to be better than me, I kind of think to myself, and maybe this is, self-deprecating, is that I feel like if I'm at 100%, I can only expect the kid or the student or whatever it is to be about 70, 80% of as good as I'm giving that example.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, I got to be like 120% in order for this kid to have a chance. And so, it's, we gotta be able to teach the right things the right way at the right time. And that's a lot of pressure too. And I think that goes back to the struggle, the conflict that we have as being dads. When do we do these things? How do we do them? It's different with your 4 kids. It's different now than it was then. You have your parents that did certain things that maybe worked for you, didn't work for you, but yeah, when I see some of these things nowadays that are, and gentle parents out there, I'm not trying to call you out here, but there's some aspects of that. Like, I'm a teacher that is more of a gentle teacher. I'm encouraging and I'm pumping people up and I'm getting them excited, but that's not all you can do. That's not. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be. You got to tell them no. There have to be some boundaries. There have to be some rods, if you will, or else apparently you hate your son, and I don't think that's the case, but yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll finish with this last quote that I see that you put on here. If a man does not teach his children truth, others will teach him error. And that's definitely how I view things is if you don't raise your kid in the way he should go, the world's going to raise him. And the world is anti what we believe. The world is the enemy to what we believe. And we're seeing that now more so than ever, which we will touch on in the next episode of the Present Life podcast, which we'll get to here in a bit. But anyway, discipline is a must. It hurts. It's difficult. And allow the Lord to guide you in it, because you need to go to him so he can do it through you, because we try to do it. I mean, for me at least, it hasn't been great.
I mean, and hey, it's progress over perfection, right? Sure. And so for those of you guys out there, dads too, or gonna be dads, know that, we've spent the last 2 episodes talking a lot about conflicts and struggles that we experience and you will experience. Once again, not to bum you out or to discourage anybody from being a dad or loving being a dad, but just to understand, like, also there are people here that are experiencing the same things, like AJ and I, and that it also, once again, I think about the phrase, the verse James 1, 2, and 3 almost every single day. Consider it pure joy that we're faced with these trials, these challenges, these obstacles, because in doing so, it produces faith and produces endurance in that faith. And so that's what we're here doing, producing endurance in your faith. And so good luck out there with that, and consider it pure joy. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Keep going.